Good morning, guys. Welcome to the Ask the Expert Show. My name is Gary Cassady. I'll be your host today, and I've got a awesome interview today with a gentleman by the name of David Haverfeld from Connecticut. He's a landlord, manages properties, builds, flips properties. He's been around. I met him 4 or 5 years ago at an Outland Cowgill event, and we've kind of connected from there. And he's a wealth of knowledge, ladies and gentlemen. And it's got some big things happening. And I'm going to bring David on. David, how are you, sir?
I'm good. Good morning, Gary.
Morning. So how's Connecticut doing?
Connecticut is last in most things, but I'm doing as good as I ever do.
So you ever do? Yeah. So tell everybody a little bit about yourself. I mean, I've known you for close to 4 years now. We actually have done not really deals together, but we've actually won some lottery at one time. We had a lottery
pool. Yeah. When the lottery gets like to 300 million, I run a little lottery pool for fun. And crazy thing, one time we actually won 50 grand, and it was the best win ever, worst loss win ever, because we won 50 grand. But when you cut it up 40 ways, it was $800 each.
Yeah, and I think the bad thing is I was in Connecticut at the event, and you and I were having a drink, and I think we were talking, and like, hey, did we ever win anything? And you're like, oh, I didn't even check the tickets for like a month or something like that.
Yeah, we didn't win the jackpot. Like somebody else won the jackpot, and like checking like a stack of losing tickets is just a pain. So I just, I do it when I have time, which is never. So I was sitting on a $50,000 ticket in my little book for like almost 2 months. And I had no idea I was walking around with 50 grand in my little book. No.
Yeah. What'd you do with your $800, man?
I would be lying if I said I knew.
I don't even remember what I did with mine, to be honest with you.
It's gone. It probably went to help my local economy at my local restaurants and bars.
There you go. So, yeah. Now, how long you been a real estate investor, like a landlord and stuff?
I bought my first property that I didn't live in 2006. So it was my 14th year.
14. Okay, awesome. And so you kind of seen a little bit of the economy drop. The first, when it dropped there back in 2008, 2009.
Yeah, so it started in 2006. Actually, it was at a peak that had just started to dip, and that's when I got in because I thought, oh, a little dip, this is my chance. I was very young, didn't know anything. So I have gotten to ride a market from peak to peak. The market goes in cycles.
Yeah.
And I have now lived through peak to peak, and I wish I could convey to some of the new guys that when you're at the peak, you should make some different decisions than be just excited and jump in, because that's exactly what I did.
Yeah.
And, it didn't go well at the beginning,
Yeah. Well, why'd you stay in if it didn't go well at the beginning? What was that decision?
The truth, I hate to lose. I was losing money on the first 4 properties every single month, and I was so mad that I was losing that I'm like, well, I have to keep going until I can recover that. And so I kept going because I just hate losing. So I just kept on it, and I learned how to do it right.
Yeah.
And then when the market crashed, basically I bought at the top, several in a row, all losers. But as the market started to crash, I just kept buying, and I would do whatever it took. I figured it out and kept buying. And as the market came back, I got to ride this huge wave of appreciation from like say 2011, 2012 till now.
Yeah.
And that's made me what I've got,
Yeah, absolutely. So now you flip houses, you're a landlord. Tell us a little bit about some of like your flips. Now I've got to kind of clue the audience in here a little bit. If you follow David on Facebook, he's got some of the most amazing landlord stories that he tells out there. I mean, some of them are just, you're like, wow, you imagine that? He needs to write a book about this stuff. So tell us, like,
I like to put up the stories where you read it and you're like, well, that's too crazy and stupid for him to have made it up. So that must be true.
Yeah.
And, yeah, man. When you have a bunch of units, I mean, and I'm actively involved in the management. I have my own property management company, so I get the stories. I don't just get the checks at the end. I'm actively involved. And yeah, man, I call them the 5%. So one of the things that I know I don't do well is I fail at communicating that 95% of my tenants are wonderful, excellent people, no issues. And when I'm telling stories, it makes it sound like all of my tenants have crazy stories, which of course is definitely not true. And so I started calling them the 5% to try to remind myself and convey that it's only a very small percentage because, Johnny and Susie paid their rent on time and took the garbage out on garbage day. It just doesn't make a good Facebook story,
That's right. Yeah.
So.
Yeah, I do a Facebook training, and one of the things I always tell people on Facebook training is that they don't want to see like the in between. They want to see the really ugly stuff at the beginning, and the really good stuff at the end. Like when you rehab a house or kitchen, they don't want to see a standard kitchen. They want to see the ugly, cockroaches running all over the place and hoarder stuff, and then they want to see the after the fact. So yeah, yeah. So what did you do before you got into real estate?
I was in IT. I was a help desk computer technician.
Okay.
Help desk and like computer tech. So I was like 2000, maybe 1999, 2000 until 2007.
Okay.
I got laid off from an insurance company in 2007. There was 3 rounds of layoffs, and I didn't make the third one. And I got laid off. I got unemployment. I got the very, very first Obama unemployment extension, which I was super grateful for at the time because I needed that, like I needed oxygen. But that allowed me to get off on my own, and I never worked for anyone again since October 2007.
Oh, that's awesome. Yeah. Now you did some stuff with car. Did you buy and sell cars too? Do you have your own dealership?
So I was flipping cars as a side hustle all that time. And just like, I didn't have a dealership or anything. I was just buying and selling cars out of my driveway, doing like a kid would, I wasn't legitimate at all, just for cash. And then I was using a mechanic who rented a bay at a local repair shop. And one day, the owner of that shop was losing his shop. And so my mechanic said, "Hey man, do you want to buy it with me?" And me, I've never been good at due diligence. So I'm like, "How much is it?" "Oh yeah, that sounds good." And I just bought it. I had no idea how to run a business. I had my very first employee there. I had someone running the front, and but I did it, and it was a insane, terrible learning experience. I was in the hood, and I'm getting beat over here. I had it like 9 months, and I lost it. But now I'm addicted to it. I hate losing. So I ended up going and buying another car dealership and doing it much better. And then I had a partnership that, ran its course. We're still friends, and so I went a long time without, but I recently bought another car dealership. I wanted to diversify because I'm anticipating a real estate downturn, and I was looking for some recession-proof type businesses, and a used car shop is normally a recession-proof type business. I also went for a liquor store, same thing. Liquor stores do fine, whether it's still going great or going bad. Didn't anticipate a virus, of course, so I don't think anybody did. The virus actually did affect the car dealership because people are driving less breakdowns, less service, less cars. So, I missed on that one, but I still have that car dealership, and, we're starting to do okay now. And
awesome.
I just want to diversify some.
Yeah. Well, that does bring up a really good point, David, that, I'm starting to talk to a lot of real estate investors, across the country, and a lot of them are really starting to diversify a little bit. I got a guy right here in Columbus, Ohio. He's looking to buy a concrete company and just, essentially just diversify there. He does a lot of commercial, work there. And I've got guys that are buying restaurants, and essentially I think a restaurant is almost a bad investment at the moment with all the coronavirus going on. But I'm noticing a trend of investors getting in, doing really well, and they're diversifying a little bit.
So investors, have they been in it since the last peak? Those guys you're talking about?
Some have been in probably since about 2008, early 2005, probably, somewhere on that range. And then a couple are recently within the last year or so.
Right, so the older guys, I know the older guys, they're thinking just like I am. So in the last peak, when we went to a downturn, you couldn't flip through it because banks stopped lending. So there was no product. Landlords did fine, but flipping dried up.
Mm-hmm.
And so I always thought that if the next downturn looks like the last downturn, that you can't flip through it. So I better find something else that makes money in case thing dries up. And that is my bread and butter. So those guys are thinking the same way I am, I bet.
Yeah, absolutely, absolutely. Well, I know a lot of wholesalers in our area have kind of fallen on the wayside because a lot of the hard money guys that were loading in our area when the coronavirus first was going home, essentially it dried up, and so like they were trying to find flippers that couldn't get funding, so that kind of dried up their business. Have you experienced that in Connecticut at all?
So all the hard money countries, all the hard money lenders across the country, all the big ones dried up.
Mm-hmm.
Nobody doing it, but the little guys are still there. My hard money lender is a guy named Robert Parker. He's been great. He's been lending straight through. He got a little more conservative, which is smart on his part.
Absolutely.
He's continuing to do business, and he's actually doing better business probably because his competition has gone away. All those big guys, all their funding sources just froze up out of like fear. And those big companies, I mean, they couldn't predict the future, so I don't blame them for doing that. But it's what is it called? A self-fulfilling prophecy. When you're afraid of the real estate market going down, so you stop lending money, and then it caused the real estate market to go down. That's kind of what they did, and I think we're lucky to have not seen it cause a real significant effect. I mean, the market is the hottest I've seen it in my lifetime right now, and I wish I had pushed harder to buy some houses that needed to be flipped during the virus, because I stopped looking because it was scary in the beginning. We didn't know what was going to happen.
Yep. Yeah, I mean, no one, you really didn't know at all. So I know some people stopped, some people picked up at that time. And, but you've been doing it long enough and you understand kind of the game, and you can get right back in, whenever you want and start picking up where you left off. So, which is a nice thing.
Back in now.
Yeah. So what, how have you noticed like the coronavirus, the COVID stuff has affected you guys much?
I've definitely taken some losses. I have an Airbnb. My Airbnb was booked every weekend. It's near a casino. The casino closed. My bookings went from every weekend to zero for about 3 months. It's just starting to pick up again now. The car dealership was taking losses for a while. I actually unemployed. I put 3 of my people on unemployment, and I just had one person stay to open the shop and do whatever repairs came in. Very, very low income during that time. I've got some tenants that need to go. Tenants that were affected by the virus, we've been working with every one of them. No landlord should want to kick out a tenant that was good but was affected by the virus. You're gonna wait. And they're gonna figure it out. They're gonna get unemployment, or they're gonna get their job back. Landlords don't make money on empty apartments, so you're gonna want to work with those people. But there's always the regular people that are just bad tenants. They're just deadbeats, and those guys. The governor has stopped us from being able to evict them. So we're taking some losses there. The aid packages have actually been very helpful to me. I did pretty well on the PPP program and the EIDL loans. We got, I think it was a reasonable amount. It's not enough to like make me rich, but I'm able to use the money correctly because I have 8 W-2 employees total. So I was able to use the money correctly, so the PPP is forgivable. The EIDL loan is an excellent loan, and I'm able to use it in ways that kept me afloat. It kept me from getting into any financial trouble, and it let me absorb all of the losses I took from the virus. So I think that it was actually really good for me. I know people complain about it sometimes, but that aid program was, I'm a fan.
Yeah. Okay. Now, you guys, you're part of another group that recently had filed a lawsuit, correct?
I am.
Can you tell us about this particular lawsuit? Being like, since I don't know where you're at on the case or whatnot on the lawsuit, but can you give us some particulars on why you filed and where you're at with it at the moment?
Sure, I'd be happy to. So I am one of 3 plaintiffs who is suing the governor of Connecticut. If you ever asked me a long time ago, like, if I would ever sue the governor, I would be like, no, why would I ever do that? I actually can't believe I have to sue the guy. And that I was one of the people that had to stand up. I didn't want to be one of the plaintiffs. But so many landlords are taking losses. Our governor is Governor Lamont. And he's just showing us, like so many other governors across the country, that they don't understand how housing works. And this is a consistent problem across the country that I hope landlords everywhere can like take a lesson from this, that your government does not understand how housing works. So I'll give you an example. So the virus comes and governors decide like, hey, we don't want anyone to have to lose their homes, be evicted, become homeless during the virus. And that's a reasonable position to take, right? Nobody wants anyone to have to move around during the virus, especially in the beginning when it was so uncertain. So what he does is he says, nobody can evict anybody, no late fees. You can use your security deposit for rent. And, he closes the courts. Even when he reopened most of the courts, he left housing courts closed because he just didn't want to evict anyone. So what effect does that actually have, right? You can have an eviction moratorium for a while. But that means that landlords, we're not taking any of the people that have like borderline screening. So if you have someone with iffy credit or iffy income, someone who needs to move somewhere, because people still need to move, landlords are turning them down because if it goes badly, we have no ability to evict. They could move in the first month and they can stay there. We're afraid that we could be as far as a year away, because once the courts reopen, the backlog is going to be amazing of all these people that people have been trying to evict since like December. People haven't paid rent since like October, some of them. Because in Connecticut, evictions are pretty slow. It's usually a 4-month process, give or take a month.
A 4-month process in Connecticut?
Yeah, we're really slow, man. We're really slow. It takes a long time.
Wow.
It takes like 45 days just to get to court, and then they always give them more time. So I mean, it can be faster, but if they fight it all, it's long. So
I mean, we can it's on an average 2 weeks, depending on when we get paperwork in Ohio, and it could take as long as a month, as long as they're not fighting and things of that nature. But
2 weeks to a month, I'm jealous, man.
Yeah.
So the result is that landlords are not taking in people that like really need the housing, people with bruised credit, people with a criminal record, people that I might normally take a chance on. I'm not taking a chance on them, and that increases homelessness.
Yeah.
And government doesn't understand that. They think they're protecting people by making it harder to evict. So I'll give you a very extreme example. Imagine that as a landlord, if I had someone I wanted to get rid of, I could call the police and say, "Come get them," and they would kick them out onto the lawn in 30 minutes. Right? A very extreme example. Not, of course, advocating that at all. But what would the result of that be? People think, oh, that's going to increase homelessness, but it's actually the opposite. That would decrease homelessness. And the reason is, if I can get rid of someone in 30 minutes, I will take a chance on nearly anyone. Because if someone comes to me who's got like terrible credit and a criminal record and he says, "Hey man, I'm reformed, I have a good job, I really need a chance." If I can get rid of you in 30 minutes, I'm like, "Hey man, my name's David, welcome to the neighborhood." They will move in, and if it goes badly, I can get them out easily. And if it goes well, they can be my tenant forever. And people are going to be able to find housing super easily. So government doesn't understand the cause and effect of making it hard to get rid of people who are not paying landlords. And I wish I could convey that message to people in positions of power, but none of them understand that concept, and they never have. They probably never will.
And you're not just out there saying, "Hey, I need to evict these people." I mean, you've always been one of the guys that have been very vocal about, for landlord or for tenants moving in and taking care of the property. I mean, you've always been, and you're one of the, when the COVID first hit, you were the one that was outspoken to me about, hey, we got to help these people out and we don't want to get them on the street. And as long as they were communicating, you were working with everybody.
I was the first person that I know of to address it. A lot of landlords were afraid. They didn't know what to say. They were afraid that there were tenants for free. So I drafted a letter to all of my tenants, and it said something along the lines of like, "Hey, if you're in financial trouble, contact us. You are not alone." And people responded to that. And then I shared that letter to several hundred other landlord friends in Connecticut and probably a few outside. And some of them are like, "Oh man, that's really the right approach to take," because your tenants are more afraid than you are. You're only at risk of losing money; they're at risk of losing their home. And so if they lost their job, and the unemployment system was so crazy, and it's still pretty poor in Connecticut. We were working on like 1980s software. So if you were paycheck to paycheck, like so many tenants are, probably half of them, and you lose your job, not your fault at all, and your unemployment, you file for it, but you have no idea where it stands. You have no idea when you're getting your first check. You don't even know if you can feed yourself next week if you're out of money. What do you do? And so the obvious answer to me was, like, just reach out to your landlord, and I'm going to write a letter to encourage you to reach out to your landlord, and we'll be like, hey, we'll put you on a list. We just want to keep status. If you file for unemployment, we're going to wait for it. Some of my tenants, I had a couple that were working under the table, so they don't qualify for unemployment. And we're going to work with them as best they can. I mean, I know, like, hey, you're not supposed to work under the table, but I mean, I don't blame them. Someone who's like a bartender or works in a restaurant, I mean, it's not crazy to work under the table. It happens.
Yeah.
So, those guys are going to be the first ones back to work. So they're going to be searching hard, and they have. But you have to work with people that are really victims of the virus, and then also the people that are being evicted before the virus because they're deadbeats or they're I have one unit they're drug dealers, and I've been trying to get rid of them, and I can't. I need the courts to be open to get rid of those guys.
Yeah.
And by the way, anyone listening that's a landlord, whether you're in Connecticut or not, we are taking donations towards the legal fund. It's an expensive lawsuit. It's filed in federal court. There's a website, landlordlegalfund.com, landlordlegalfund.com. If you want to throw us a donation, it is big dollars to get it done, but we believe that we can beat the governor because there's precedent for what we're suing for.
Yeah.
One of the items is interfering with private contracts. So the governor said you can't charge any late fees during the virus, and you can use your second month security for rent. And now that sounds like something like that you want tenants not to suffer from the virus, but remember, you already shut down eviction court, so I can't evict you no matter what. So what's the benefit to doing that? And the answer is there is none. And so that interferes with a private contract. So if you and me have a contract together, the governor does not have the power to just come in and alter the terms of the contract. He doesn't. That's not something that he's allowed to do. It's unconstitutional.
Absolutely.
That's one of the items that we're suing for. Another one is called takings. So if the governor says, hey, we don't want anyone to lose their home or be evicted during the virus, especially during the beginning when it was a scary time, that's a reasonable position to have, right? I don't want anyone to have to move. Mm-hmm. So what he did was he gave the impression, maybe even not on purpose, but he gave the impression that tenants like, hey, you don't have to pay and you can work it out later. Mm-hmm. And that was terrible. Landlords were up in arms when they heard that. And it amounts to illegal taking. So what he's done is he has taken my property and he has forced me to house the public without compensation.
Yeah.
That's called takings. If I have the ability to remove them, then I have it's still my property, but he's taken mine. On top of that, I'm still responsible to fix it. If utilities are included, I'm responsible to pay them. The mortgage furlough or forbearance, whatever it's called, it's not real. It helps so few people.
Yeah.
And a mortgage is only one of 50 bills a month that a landlord pays, even if he does get the forbearance. Mm-hmm. So illegal takings is the other thing that we're suing for, and the last item is to reopen housing court, because that is the only tool we have to get rid of a tenant that needs to leave. And, so those are the three things we're suing for. Every one of them is absolutely justified, and wish us luck. I think we have a hearing in later July for an emergency injunction, even though it's weeks away. I got to tell you, man, I'm like, man, their definition of emergency is not the same as mine. And my attorneys are great, and they're like, hey, that is fast in court time. So I'm like, all right.
That's fast in court time.
Yeah.
It might be, especially nowadays. So, yeah, being a landlord, we want to provide housing, affordable housing, safe housing to individuals. And we don't necessarily want to evict people, once we bring them in. The only time that I feel that I want to evict somebody is when they're not working, if they get behind on rent and they're not willing to communicate and not willing to put the effort forward, then we're going to essentially file the paperwork, or if they're destroying the property. So, those are kind of our two big circumstances. If they're destroying the property or doing something at the property like drug dealing, something of that nature, where we don't want that activity, then we're going to, essentially, evaluate that. And then obviously non-payment of rent without, any recourse. I always looked at it as landlords, should be able to work with them. And I was always kind of like the nice guy when it came to late rent, until one time I had a tenant that was, and you're going to probably kill me, David. She was behind 3 months of payment, and I was trying to work with. She kept telling me, "Oh, it'll be next week. It'll be next week," right? and it was close to like a birthday. And I showed up for some maintenance on the property. She called in, and it was something so minute. It was like I had to change a light bulb, right? And she was bragging to me about buying her son a pair of Nike Jordan tennis shoes, and it was $200 and some tennis shoes that she was bragging about. Now, I just bought my son at that time tennis shoes, and they were like $30, brand new. And so, like, that really hit me hard. And it was like she was stealing from my family. She was stealing from my business when I start looking at it a little bit differently. So
it's true. It's true. And on your point about eviction, landlords don't want to evict anybody. The average eviction in Connecticut is $5,000 in damage and losses. That's the average. And so landlords don't want to evict anyone. Eviction is not something that landlords do to tenants. Eviction is a reaction. Tenants have to do something to get evicted. It's a reaction. That's another thing government never understands. They think it's something that landlords do to tenants, but it's the opposite. Mm-hmm. The victim of an eviction is the landlord, not the tenant. The tenant has earned it, whatever they've done. And I remember one time on Facebook, there was some like nonprofit who was trying to help victims of eviction, and they called asking me if I would help. And I said, "You're going to help the victims of eviction? That's great. I'm a landlord. I'm a victim of eviction. How will you help me?" And the lady didn't know what to say.
That's awesome. So, yeah. Hey, I think we might have someone commented, I think, here.
I don't have the chat up. Oh, there's a chat here.
Oh, yeah, there's a little chat. Yeah. Said, did you apply for any of the PPP loans? Yeah, I mean, you kind of mentioned that earlier.
I did, yeah, and I don't mind sharing. I have 4 W-2 employees in my real estate property management business, and I have 4 W-2 employees at my car dealership, so I have 8 total. The PPP loan I got was $42,000, and I'm able to use it correctly. It's 75% has to be payroll minimum, and the other 25% could be payroll, or it can be, I believe it was rent, utilities, and interest are the 3 things that are acceptable ways to spend it. I'm able to spend it all correctly. I expect it to be forgivable. And that was extremely helpful because I've taken losses in excess of $42,000 from the virus. And it allows me to hum along, and it allowed me to keep my people employed. I gave them the option, actually. So when the virus hit, again, I keep saying it, but we almost forget now how uncertain things were in the very beginning. I mean, we were afraid to touch the cash being handed through the window. Like, we closed our office and we were accepting cash through the window. And I mean, I cannot. How scary does it have to be afraid to take your tenants' money? That's crazy, right? That's crazy. I'm afraid to take their money. Yeah. So we were. It was so scary in the beginning that I gave all of my people the option to work. I said, "Listen, I really want my dealership to stay open. I really want my office to stay open, but I don't want to force any of you to put your lives in danger." And so at the office, 2 of my girls said, "We'd like to work from home, but keep working," and 2 of my girls says, "We'll stay in the office and keep it open." And I was like, great. At the car dealership, 3 of my people wanted to take unemployment and stay home. And 1 of them said, "I'll keep the doors open." And I was like, great. And I really thank my people for stepping up. And so that when the PPP money came along, I was actually able to, and I lost a couple through this, by the way. Of the 8, I lost 3. 3 have not or are not coming back that I've had to replace through various reasons. 1 found another opportunity. And 2, they decided not to come back. 1 of them is just making more on unemployment, and I mean, it's hard to blame them. Yeah. And another one just, it just didn't work out. Not a big deal. But it allows me to hire new people, make some personnel changes, and it allowed me to hire someone when I didn't have the income to replace them, because the car dealership and rents are down. When your cash flow is way down, it's really hard to hire someone new. And PPP loan allowed that to happen.
Yeah, awesome. So. What do you do much in commercial or anything like that, David, at all?
I do some, not a ton. So like there's 2 kinds of commercial, right? Anything above 4 units in residential. I still think of it as residential, but I have a 7 unit, a 10 unit. I had a 22 unit that I sold last fall in residential, but actual commercial. I have a gun store. I'm the landlord of a gun store, pizza restaurant, thrift shop, upholstery shop. I'm doing a development for elderly housing in Manchester. We're going to turn an old knitting mill into 25 units of elderly housing. The virus has slowed down our process a little bit, but we're still moving forward because demand is still really high.
Yeah.
And we're trying to figure it out with lenders and stuff, because obviously commercial lending is still touch and go, So I have a bunch of commercial units, but just, hit or miss, nothing. It's whatever came my way. I own my car dealership building. That liquor store that I picked up, I ended up selling it, but I owned a liquor store for, 10 minutes or so. Not my best idea, but
not the best.
Yeah, it worked out.
Yeah. So, how do you keep everything on track, man? Like, you got a lot of stuff going, and I had a conversation with a buddy the other day that was trying to do multiple things. How in the world do you keep things together? I mean, you got a lot going on, man.
So if I was to describe myself as far as like some of my top qualities, like creativity is near at the top, but number 2 would be delegation. I've actually learned to be a great delegator, and I have an outstanding team in my office. Again, four ladies that they keep it running. They know the answers to more questions about my business than I do, and I'm not afraid to admit that. Anytime something happens, I'm like, hey, can you handle this? Hey, can you handle this? And the answer is always, yes, David, I'll figure it out, David. Can you stop doing that, David? But they figure it all out. So the answer is having a great team behind you. And for those listening that are not there yet, if you're a one-man show or you're just getting into it, probably one of the hardest things I ever did was making the jump towards having staff, having my first staff person in real estate. Because you look at it like you can't afford it. Maybe if you're making 30 grand in real estate and you're going to hire someone and it's going to cost you 30 grand, and you're like, oh my God, I'm going to do all of this and earn zero. That sucks, right? That sounds like it sucks. So the answer is to slowly jump into it. You hire an assistant for 10 hours a week, and you delegate some of the things that you don't want to do, or they're just not your strengths. And that's how you start. You don't start with a full-time employee. But the sooner you start delegating things that you shouldn't be doing in your business that are not your strengths, the faster you'll grow, the faster you'll get to where you want to be. And the best example I give is a bookkeeper. If you're a real estate person, the odds of you being a bookkeeper also are pretty low, of being a good bookkeeper. You probably are doing it. Hire a bookkeeping service. They will stop you from screwing it up, first of all. But even if you're good at it, they will give you those hours of your life back. And you can use those hours to work on your business. So the way I keep everything together is just having a good staff and delegating. And then I've taken all of the tasks that I'm not good at and I've given them away. I've hired them out. If there's 1,000 things to do in my life, I'm only good at 100 of them. The other 900 of them, I'm either not good at or I'm really terrible at. But if I hire all those things out and delegate them all, if I just focus on the 100 that I'm good at, I'm going to look like a rock star every day to everybody that's watching. And it lets me grow and be successful.
Yeah. So one of the things I always ask real estate investors, or business owners when I'm talking to them is one of the things is I always want to know is how they got started, and do they have mentors? Do they read books? How did that come about? I mean, because not everybody has money, right?
Sure.
People think like, oh, you got to have all this money to get into real estate. I thought you had to when you first got into the business. When I first did. So how did you get started? Did you have money, not money? Did you borrow money from mom and dad? How did that look?
So, without getting into extreme depth, when I started in real estate, I had no money. Maybe I had like 10 grand saved up. But I did have great credit and a good job. When I say great credit, like 720, which is great for a kid who's, early 20s.
Yeah.
So I had just paid my bills. I had no idea what my credit was. I went to talk to a loan person, and they're like, sure, you can buy a house. This is 2006. So in 2006, they were just giving money away to anybody. That's actually not that far away from where we are right now. So if you have good credit and job, you can pretty much get a loan. So I signed on the dotted line for my first 4 properties, which was a single family, a 2-family, and 2 3-families, all in quick succession in late 2006, early 2007. All of them lost money from day one because I didn't know how to calculate cash flow, and I didn't have anyone to teach it to me at the time. But I just bought 4 properties real quick. I didn't have to put any money down on any of them. They had things back then called 80-20 loans. I don't know if they still exist, but they would say, hey, you got to put 20% down on this loan because you don't live there. And I'm like, oh, I don't have 20% down. And they're like, oh, well, we'll just give you another loan for the 20%. And I'm like, sure, sign me up. And that's how it was back then. And they asked me, I mean, it's 14 years from now, so hopefully the statute of limitations has run out. But like they told me to just say that I lived in every one of them. I didn't know I couldn't do that. No one said that's wrong or illegal.
Wow.
So I just signed up, and they said, do you live there? And I'm like, yeah, I'm going to live there. And I didn't know I couldn't do that. Everyone else was doing it. I had no idea it was wrong. And funny thing, I was living in 4 houses at the same time. I had signed that I lived in 4 houses. And I was actually still renting an apartment. I owned 4 houses, but I didn't like any of them enough to live in them. I was renting an apartment in Southington at the time. You know, obviously a rough start. And I am actually jealous of all of the new people listening now and are just starting out in the last 5 years, because we didn't have Facebook back then. We didn't have this community of people that share information and knowledge. And if we did, my beginnings would have looked very different, because I made all the mistakes myself. My parents were not able to teach me about real estate. They didn't know. I didn't know to seek out a mentor, which is so stupid in hindsight. It's actually one of the biggest regrets in my life, is that I did not seek out a mentor. But it didn't occur to me to find someone who was doing what I wanted to do and learn from them. It just didn't cross my mind. I didn't have any entrepreneurial training when I was young. I was, my family's very traditional. Go to school, study hard, get good grades, get a job, save your money. That's, very, very normal, from our parents' generation. And so, yeah, man, I got those 4 houses. They were all losers. And I got to say, what kind of changed my life as far as a mentor and stuff was I had 6 houses at the time. And someone said, hey, have you ever been to CTREA, Connecticut Real Estate Investor Association? I know you've been there with me, right?
Yeah.
With Alan. And so I'm like, no, what's that? And he says, you own 6 properties and you've never been there? I was like, oh, you got to come. And I'm like, and I went there. And I went there on one night, and there was this woman speaking that night. They have speakers where they sell you a course, or try to. And her name was Robin Thompson the first night. And so I sat there and I listened. And like, whenever Robin comes around, I always go see her. And like, there's always some new faces in the room that are just in awe. You can tell that they are amazed by her. And so that was me. I was amazed at how much she was teaching me. And I hadn't even paid any money to her yet. She was teaching me this stuff for free so far. It was like 90 minutes. And I was amazed. Meeting Robin Thompson changed my life. And Martin Toby, if you happen to be listening, shout out to him. He is the one who got me to go to CTREA that day for the first time. And it was life-changing, and I eventually took her course, and I went out to Florida to see her, and now we're friends, and she's helped me grow my business and flip better and be a better landlord, and all of the things I was missing started with that CTREA meeting.
That's all. And so, like your local real estate investors associations, I mean, they're good. I mean, I didn't know what they were when I first got into the real estate business, and someone just like you said, hey, go to this find a local REIT. And I'm like, what is that? I'd never even heard of it. Didn't even think that it existed. Like, yeah. And they change your life. I mean, you go and get information. So Brian, someone else sent a message in as well. How has teaching others how you do what you do helped your business?
So Brian's actually a good friend of mine. Actually, Brian is the person who introduced me to BNI, where I met Martin Toby, the guy who introduced me to CTREA. So I have a lot to thank Brian for. And so I am very open with my knowledge, and I do teach a lot of others now. And there's kind of 2 reasons. First of all, when I met Robin Thompson teaches that there is enough for everyone in real estate. And so I really take that to heart. So even if I've paid money or taken losses learning a hard lesson, I share it for free, because the more I give out, the more it comes back to me. If I teach 100 people how to be a landlord to the best of my ability, I mean, the fact of the matter is 90 of them will never do anything. 5 of them will be successful at it, and I'm happy for them. And the other 5% will find something maybe and call me and say, hey, David, I know you tried to teach me, but I'm not comfortable yet. Will you partner with me or something?
Yeah.
And so it all works out. I'm happy for all of it. It's actually gained me a lot. And it's gained me, just like some respect in my local real estate community, that I take the time to answer questions for everyone. And knowing that I could save them from starting the way I started. Like, they have some questions that are very easy for me to answer, and it takes me 20 seconds, and I can save them from making a mistake or help them make a better deal. And that's very satisfying for me. I enjoy it.
Yep. Awesome. I'm glad you're giving back, man. So now what I think we're getting close to the 40-minute mark here, so I know your time is valuable. What's any last words that you would essentially give some new real estate investors, new entrepreneurs getting into the business, regardless if it's real estate, the car dealership, liquor store? I mean, you've tried other things as well, and in my opinion, I've tried things, and it's okay to fail. So what's that word of wisdom that you would like to leave everybody with?
I've got some parting words of wisdom for the new guys out there, and you guys are going to hate to hear this though. This is not normal. Like, you wake up in the morning and you're searching for a house, and you wake up to 3 new MLS listings, and you go out there and they're only okay houses, and you offer full price and you get outbid and you go home discouraged. That's happening every single day to all of you right now. This is not normal. This is the peak of the market, and I've been saying this is the peak of the market for a year and a half now. So my timing is not perfect, and it's really hard to guess the top, but it doesn't get any higher than this. I cannot imagine it getting any higher than this. This is very abnormal. So my advice to you is be patient, and that sucks. I know when you're new, you're really energetic, you're really ambitious. You found funding because money is fairly free flowing now. You got a hard money lender. You found a partner with money. Anything you buy today, I believe it'll be worth less in 5 years. So buy for cash flow, not for equity. If you're buying for equity, I think it's going to be worth less in 5 years. If you are buying for cash flow and you find a multifamily that you can rent out, and if it makes you $800 a month, it will always make you $800 a month. So if the market crashes, it will still make you the cash flow. Yep. So don't overpay because other people are overpaying. Be patient. I know how much that sucks. It's really easy for me to say it because I know I'm already farther along, but be patient. You will regret it if you overpay just because everyone else is. That's my parting words of advice.
Yep. Be patient. That's awesome. So, hey, I normally I didn't right now. I've got one last question. I actually just thought about this conversation you and I had probably a year or two ago. You actually bought a bunch of land out west by Bill Gates area or something. He bought some land. How's that going?
Sure. Yeah. So, God, I don't remember. It was like 2.5 years ago, something like that. There was a press release that Bill Gates had bought 25,000 acres in the desert of Arizona, landlocked, worthless desert land. And so one of my friends, his name is Paul Murdoch, a former business partner. He's in Phoenix, and it's 45 minutes out of Phoenix. And he's like, hey, man, did you see that Bill Gates bought all this land down here? And I'm like, actually, yeah, I caught that on my Facebook feed. I wasn't thinking anything about it. And he's like, hey, you should come down and buy some land down here. And I was like, that's not really what I do. It's like, So he's like, hey, man, just do me a favor. Just call a realtor and just see what it's about, And I'm like, all right. So I called a realtor like the next day, and voicemail full. Didn't answer. And so I called another realtor in the area, voicemail full, no answer. And you couldn't reach a couple. And I think I called like 3 of them. And I'm like, man, maybe there is something to this. So obviously I'm not going to be the only person with this idea, or Paul's not going to be the only person with this idea. So I ended up finding one because I found her daughter on social media. I swear I wasn't stalking, but I found the daughter who connected me to the personal cell phone of one of the realtors. So I got one. And then I managed to get another one. And I'm like, I learned more about the projects. So the idea is that Bill Gates is he's one of the wealthiest people in the world. People are really hating on him because of the pandemic, which I think is a little unfounded, but definitely not the topic of this podcast. He is very concerned with his legacy in his old age. I grew up with Windows, Windows 95. I was a kid, I watched him, he cares about like malaria, and he cares about treating sewage, and he just cares about, he wants to leave a legacy. He's going to build a smart city. If you Google Bill Gates, Arizona, lots of these articles will come up. You can read a little about it. So I was 3 days after that announcement, I started making offers, and I just went down there and I looked for any property in the area where he bought that wasn't listed in the last 10 days, and it didn't have a price jump, because a lot of people didn't know what happened. If you own land in the desert, there's not a lot of news around there. Nothing happens there. People have had parcels for sale for 800 days where they haven't sold because nobody buys desert land. Yeah. So I made like 40 offers. I got 5 contracts out of it. I got a whole bunch of friends to invest with me. I kept about half myself, so I own a lot of it. And I actually bought $1 million worth of worthless desert land in Arizona, with the anticipation that it'll be worth more when he starts building his city, and I can sell it to other speculators once there's action. And I feel pretty good about this one. I mean, prices have gone up a little bit, but nothing super exciting. As far as I know, the city hasn't started being built. And the landlocked part was the great part. There was a planned highway from Phoenix to Las Vegas, and it was designed but never funded because they called it a boondoggle because there wouldn't be enough use. And Bill Gates, being the guy he is, I'm sure he figured out that they would build that for him. And of course, what do you know? They started building it. So the highway is under construction now. So his land that was landlocked, my land that was landlocked, is no longer landlocked. Now there's a highway going through it. So that gives it a lot of value. And I'm hopeful that I can triple up for me and my investors. And it's a fun project. And even in a worst case scenario, if nothing happens, it's still land. I only paid, like $5,000 and under per acre. So I can, worst case scenario, if I had to sell it for $4,000, it'll still sell eventually.
Yeah.
So I thought the risk was low and the upside was high, and it's kind of exciting, and we'll see how it goes.
That's awesome. Yeah. So very cool. Well, hey, David, I really appreciate you getting on the show today, and some great words of wisdom. And I wish you the best, and good luck in your your lawsuit. What's the website again that you're talking about?
Landlordlegalfund.com. And also, if any of you landlords are having problems with your governors in your home state, I can connect you with my legal team. I can describe what we've done and how we've done it to try to share info, because I know a lot of other states are having the same problem, that your government does not understand housing and is showing that they don't value you as a housing provider. They're just like, hey, we want people not to have to move. I don't care if they live in your house for free, and I'll give you any information. I'll share whatever we've learned so far, if it helps you.
Awesome. Well, again, hey, appreciate being on the show. And check out the website, landlordlegalfund.com. And if you want to donate, and reach out to David if you like. So again, hey, David, appreciate it. Thank you, sir.
Thank you so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
Yep, no problem.
Take care.
Thanks.